Welcome to Why Such a Fuss, an exciting new channel dedicated to help individuals and businesses to learn more about data protection in a way that is easy and engaging. I'm Christina from CVG Solutions, and I am a fully qualified data protection professional. I am passionate about educating, empowering, and enabling businesses to thrive. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel and help us to spread the word. Data protection is there for a reason. It protects you, your family, loved ones, customers, employees from coming to harm through the use of personal data. So make sure you click subscribe. Now, get ready to embark on a journey of growth and knowledge as we dive into the world of data protection. Julie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. And good morning. I'm Julie. I'm the founder of Apuri Solutions, which is a HR consultancy and coaching service. I'm a chartered fellow for the CIPD and also an accredited coach. So I work with small and medium-sized businesses who are seeking to outsource their HR or need a bit of extra support. And in terms of the HR support that I offer, it's anything from day-to-day to strategic. But for me, it's about providing people solutions. And as a leadership coach, I work to empower individuals and teams so that they can achieve their goals using a variety of methods, including NLP and motivational analysis. So as Christina said, for me, it's about empowering and enabling businesses and individuals to achieve what it is that they're wanting to achieve, whether that's through HR or through coaching. Christina, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, sure. So again, good morning, everybody. So I'm Christina from CVG Solutions, which is a multi-award winning GDPR or data protection consultancy. I primarily work with small and medium-sized businesses, including charities. And I really like to work with them because I love to see them thrive. So that's why I gravitate towards them. I tend to have a hands-on practical approach with my client, and I tailored the solution in proportionate to their size and complexity. And so I help my clients navigate the intricacy of GDPR because it's not black and white, it's a variety of shades of grey. And I do that primarily by educating them on the regulation and how to apply it to their environment, because knowledge is power. That also then in turn enables them to operate with a high-performing culture, which then fuels their business growth. So for me, it's all about educating, empowering, and enabling. As part of the onboarding process, obviously there are some training that new started is required to undertake. I know I've done quite a few, and every time I started a new role. Can you take us through some of those?
Yeah, of course. So again, this is going to be really dependent on the organisation, and I think as we said throughout and how we often approach it is that it's going to be really dependent on the size of your business to what you're going to be able to do, what you need to be able to do, etc. So we've got things like the ISO, which is how you process the information, your health and safety and compliance. Of course, health and safety is a mandatory one for absolutely everyone under the sun. The joys of DSE and moving and handling are still there. They will always be there. That we need to do. And of course, some of this training will be continuous throughout an employee life cycle. But of course, it's really good to start on the right foot and get everyone trained as soon as they join the business. We may also find that there's training on confidentiality, because what is confidentiality to one person is going to be completely different to another. And what you hear when you're in your business, in your role, you may think, oh, that's confidential. You may just think, oh, well, I'm just being told it so I can tell Joe Blogs. One of the major things that I do with leaders is sit down and get them to think about, actually, when they're hearing information, are they hearing it to share it, or are they hearing it because they need to know it for their role, but it's not to be dispersed throughout the business? Because there's a different mindset in those. We've then got things like security. And of course, it could be IT security. It could be not leaving things on the printer, which again, we're all probably guilty of. Or it could be security to the building as well. Again, depending on your location of work and the type of work you do. We've then got specific training to the role and to the business, but then things like the disability equality training, making sure that everyone is on the right or the same level when thinking about how to talk and interact with individuals. We've got the worker protection, so the anti-harassment that came in October last year, making sure that people are trained on that, because of course, for that one, employment tribunals can award an additional 25% to the individual if the cases are founded. We've then got social media training. What should go on social media? There's certainly been cases in the past where people have posted really inappropriate things on social media, and actually that's ended in the termination of their contract. But in order to do that, we need to be able to put that line in the sand and say, this is appropriate, this isn't appropriate. I think the one that springs to mind is where someone said, I think it was on Twitter, that they were late for work because they'd been involved in a hit and run, which was absolutely horrific. And the fact that they posted it on there and that they'd been involved and not stayed resulted in their dismissal.
Wow.
Let alone the fact that, are they putting posts up that aren't appropriate for the business or the type of sector that they're in? We've then got, of course, the most important, GDPR compliance. Getting that one in there. But we've also got things that will come through, such as active shooter training. Now, whilst this isn't as yet a big thing for the UK, certainly in the US, active shooter training happens an awful lot. We know it happens through from infant school all the way up through to employment. But we are starting to see organisations train individuals in the UK on active shooter training and what to do if this was to happen. Now, all of those different things, let alone the code of conduct, behaviours, etc., are trainings that will come in. In terms of making sure that the training is completed, because there's one thing saying, yes, we're adhering to the standards that you've set, dear framework person. We also need to show that they've been completed, that they're measured, etc. So it's not just about holding the training, it's then about how do you capture that someone's done it, when they've done it, so that you can do the renewal, but also how successful they have been. So that could be those questionnaires that I was talking about previously, surveys, etc., where you are actually able to show that people have fully understood, rather than it just being a tick in the box. So there's an awful lot of things, again, to consider when we're thinking about, well, just doing a bit of training.
Yeah, training is really, really important for, as part of the induction for any new starter. And then there is quite a lot to be achieved and to be done. And again, depending on the size of the organization, but it could be as long as 3 months. From a data protection perspective, GDPR training is mandatory. And for a new starter, it should be carried out within the first month of employment, or onboarding rather, because this doesn't just apply to employee, it also applies to volunteers. So if you're bringing volunteers in, or if you're bringing in self-employed, like contractors, You should provide them with the GDPR training within the first month of them onboarding the company. And so it absolutely needs to be part of the induction process. What I've noticed is that organizations tend to achieve these via online courses through, for example, the organization LMS or from external online training providers. And the reason why they do this is because A, is the cheapest method, both in terms of cost and time, but also going back to what you were saying earlier, Julie, about capturing whether it's been done, how it's been measuring it, etc. The online allows you to do that. So, but you need to watch out, because to ensure that the quality of the training material is relevant and accurate. Now, I cannot begin to tell you the amount of GDPR online training that I've come across that it's inaccurate, even if it's from reputable providers. It's just unbelievable. Okay, so you need to give priorities to providers that offer training that has been developed in collaboration or by a GDPR specialist, or consider creating one in-house. So you could create a video and then provide them with like a quiz, for example, that you can, once you've developed it, you can reuse time and time again. And then you just need to update it once in a while. And you could create this video in collaboration with a GDPR specialist, and you could do that under a perpetual licensing agreement. So you pay for the time that the specialist spends with you in creating the video, but then they grant you a perpetual license. So it means that you can use it internally for forever. So by doing that, not only you ensure that the material is accurate, but also that is bespoke to your business. And so by doing that, it will be more effective. Staff will be able to relate to it, therefore more likely to apply what they've learned into their daily activities, which is often the issue with the online training. They do the training past 90%, but they don't actually apply it to their work. They come out of the screen and they've forgotten what they've learned. So really shop around and really do your homework. So the last thing that you want is for your employee to have incorrect GDPR knowledge, as these will then impact your compliance and actually will expose you to breaches and complaints, really. So it's really important that you spend time in looking at the right training for your organization. And one of the clients I was working with, they were a nursing home, and they used an online GDPR training, which was done from the perspective of the nurses, so the carers, the nurses and the doctors, which was fine for the nurses and the doctors, but you also had an awful lot of people working in the offices. So what they were learning was not relevant to them. And so they didn't have two separates, one for the sort of hospital side, if you want, of the staff, and then the office side of the staff. So it's something that they could relate on. And the office people, they were actually quite frustrated and complaining about that. So you need to think of that. Was there anything else you wanted to add to this, Julie?
No, I don't think so. I think it is. It's apart from reiterating the importance of making sure that the training is relevant. It got me thinking about some active shooter training that I was looking at, and it was the opening scene was tanks coming over the hill with American flags. Now, to circulate at that in the UK, people are going to switch off automatically. Whilst the purpose of the training is really important, actually how you're selling it, how it's coming across, the actual information that you're sharing is so vital to get that interest, to see how people can use it in their day-to-day. So yeah, it's just really to second that. Yeah. Just wanted to cover the last point. So as part of the onboarding process, the employer collects a bunch of personal data from the new starter. You've mentioned some of them earlier on as well, Julie,
But is there anything else that the employer collect at this stage that we should talk about?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, and of course this isn't an exhaustive list, because depending on the individual, of course, there's going to be different types of information. But if we consider disabilities and impairments, we may collect information from individuals on that before they start, to think about, well, risk assessments, reasonable adjustments, what do we need to put in place in order to support that individual coming into the business. So that then takes that data on a bit further for who we're having that conversation with within the business. If we've got individuals that need medication stored on site, is it that we need to talk to a facilities team? If they have epilepsy or they're going to have seizures, etc., do we need to let the first aiders know? And how we do that with that person's consent, because some of the times people can be absolutely fine with sharing the information. Other times, especially if it's an early diagnosis, it can be quite a imposing action that all of a sudden we need to tell the world and the dog. But also things like, I've had new starters coming through that are going through gender transitions, and understanding actually how we can be supportive to them, what they want us to share with the teams, so they're not greeted with a barrage of questions on their first day or on their fifth day, because you want that person to be successful. So I think for me, it's when you're receiving any of that type of information, having that conversation, if it's not you, the manager, the HR professional, the person who's used to having these conversations with that individual, to work out the best way that the data is going to be shared, who it's going to be shared with, and why on earth you need to share it. Because, of course, it is personal information. So, Christina, I didn't know if you had anything.
Yes, just wanted briefly to just add that when it comes to EDI, so quality, diversity and inclusion data, which organizations are keen to collect, and there is obviously a good reason for collecting that information. You also need to be watchful. So you need to make it very clear to your new starter that providing this information is totally voluntary. Unless obviously their medical situation or disability, it's relevant, but they are under no obligation to provide you with this data. Organization also should collect this data wherever possible after the employment contract is signed, so that the provision of this data is not influenced by whether the individual will get the job or not, if that makes sense. Because if you're using consent, then otherwise it would be coerced and therefore invalid. Once you have used or collected this data, think of where you're going to store it. Are you storing it together with the employee file, which you shouldn't, or a separate file, perhaps anonymized? Where geographically are you storing this data? So, for example, look at your cloud service location, because you might need to consider cross-border transfer. So I've also noticed recently on various social medias that organizations are becoming keen to announce that a new employee has started working with them, and they do that with a social media post with a photo of the new employee, and they tag them in the post as well. So whenever I see this type of post, I can't help but wonder, have you checked that the new starters, how they feel about this? Are they comfortable? They might not want to be the center of attention. Some of us are a bit more shy than others, or they value our privacy. What lawful basis are you using in order to process the data in this way? Because you've got to remember that between an employer and an employee, consent is not valid due to the power imbalance. So really the only suitable lawful basis would be legitimate interest, and I would be very interested in seeing your legitimate interest assessment and the balance test on how the organization is actually justifying that their interest supersedes the rights and freedom of the individual in this particular scenario. So when you're wanting to do that, be mindful that how the employees will feel about it. Perhaps consult with them, check. And if they're not comfortable, then don't do it. So that would be my stance on that. I just wanted to remind our audience to please click the follow button to avoid missing any future episodes. If you would like to get in touch with me, I can be found on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Just search for CVG Solutions. Alternatively, you can email me at info@cvgsolutions.co.uk.